Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel P., and it's really good to be here. Um, what I would like to just take 30 seconds to do before I get started is just kind of get quiet with everybody in the room. There are some of you I know and some of you I don't. And I'd really just like to feel HP here with all of us, if it's okay for 30 seconds. Right. Um, I'm really happy to be here with everybody today. Thank you so much for asking me. So I've been in 12-step rooms. I'm Rachel P. I'm a food addict living in recovery by the grace of God and all the people in these rooms. And I'll tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what life is like now. Um, and before coming into any kind of recovery, I grew up in uh, a home. My mother's mentally ill, and she's also addicted to food, rage, resentments. She's bipolar, borderline. So there's a lot of chaos and violence. And my father was raised in a family of gambling addicts. So it was crazy. Growing up in my house was just very destabilized. There was screaming, yelling. My mom is very violent. She, beat the three of us. I have two older brothers. She also used to hit my dad. And my father was a kind and gentle guy and never would, never would defend himself. Although I used to pray at night sometimes that he would just kill her, but it didn't happen. And thank God nothing I wanted happened. And I'm really grateful for that because I didn't have really an eye line on what should happen. I just had a visual of what I thought would make me happy. So, my, uh, weird stuff with food started when I was very young. My mother was always overweight. I did not have a weight problem, but she treated me like I did. And so, there was a lot of projecting and controlling my food. And I can remember very, very, very early being on what I used to call hunger strikes. I just wasn't going to eat. Just nothing was going to make me eat. And that blossomed into multiple hospitalizations for anorexia, which then morphed into bulimia. And that was my life until I was 50. And I was hospitalized multiple times. Nothing ever woke me up. I herniated my esophagus twice. My heart has stopped. I have no idea I'm alive. I really don't. Maybe it's just so I could be here with all of you today. I don't know, but I'm here. And I was in therapy. I sought help. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 19 years old because I knew it wasn't a safe place to be. I went into therapy, and I remember saying to a therapist, so I have this weird thing I do with food. I go, but we're not going to talk about it because it's not the problem. The problem is everything else and everyone else, and like if I could get all of that organized, the food thing, I'm pretty sure will level off. And so, needless to say, it never did. My 20s were, the disease was so active, especially when I was living alone. And I lived alone from when I was 19 until I was 33. And so it was very dangerous all the time. And I see now that I probably was just recreating the violence that I grew up in and inflicting it on myself. But I didn't catch it then. I really thought it was all about the weight. That's what I thought. And for someone who has the disorder and the disease the way I had it, I got the opportunity to present in the world at a normal weight. And so, it maybe prolonged my ability to get help. I don't know. And so, as these things go, I married my husband, who's an active alcoholic, and I never thought I would say these words, but thank God for that. Because he got into recovery in AA, of course, after a lot of drama in our home, and it did with the police at our house. Nothing ever was just simple or quiet. But none of that matters. And so he got into AA. And I remember I used to say if he would stop drinking, then everything would be okay. Because again, now he was the problem, not me. And he started to get better and I was getting worse. I was trying to talk to him and he was staying, very modulated and regulated. And I wanted what I always got, which was the fight that we always had. And he wasn't fighting with me. And I was enraged. And so I picked up a shoe and I hit him in the head with it, hard enough to make his head bleed. And I remember standing there thinking, what in the world have I become? Like, who am I? And I knew in that moment my life was unmanageable by me. And I really, really, really needed help. And a friend had been encouraging me to go to Al-Anon for many years. And so I finally went, but only after one of my other friends died from alcoholism, because I was still so willful I wouldn't go for my husband. I wouldn't do that. What I didn't realize was that I was going for me, but none of this was clear in the moment. So I went into Al-Anon, and someone in that room, an angel in that room, God's messenger in that room, came over to me one night. She put her hand on my shoulder in probably the gentlest way I have ever been touched in my entire life and said, I think you would really get something out of these meetings I go to on Saturday mornings. And I said, what meetings are they? And she said, Overeaters Anonymous. And I said to her, my mom took me to an Overeaters Anonymous meeting when I was a kid. I was like, what? But I was so desperate for help and for change. I went. And there I was that Saturday morning. I showed up and I knew immediately this was where I belonged. Very shortly after that first meeting, that was July of 2022, I flew to Europe with my family for 2 weeks. And we flew out July 31st, and the dates matter. We flew out July 31st, 2022, and the morning of August 1st, 2022, I had what would become my first abstinent meal. And I knew that if I ate any of these other substances, that I would spend 2 weeks in Europe binging, purging, chasing that substance around these European cities. And I was 50 years old, and I wanted for once in my life to have a quiet, enjoyable day and time. I had gotten married, I had kids, and I cannot say that I enjoyed any of those moments. And I called my sponsor. I remember where I was. I was standing in the middle of Paris. And I said, I think I just had my first abstinent meal. And she said, what are you willing to do? I said, anything. She goes, great. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And whatever you did at breakfast, do it again at lunch. And I said, I can do that. And then we made an arrangement that my bottom line abstinence would be no binging, no purging, no sugar. And for 2 weeks, I did that while I was away in Europe. And I zoomed into a meeting every day. And I did whatever she told me to do. Let's just put it that way, because I was desperate and my best thinking had gotten me here. And she seemed serene and I wanted what she had. And the process began. We got right into working the steps. I remember when I first came into the rooms, I thought, I don't know what anybody is saying. This is like a new language and I don't know what people are talking about. But over time, I bought the big book. I started reading the literature, and it's 12 steps, 12 traditions, and 9 tools. And I remember thinking, I can do that, right? 12 steps, 12 traditions, 9 tools. I can do that. So I really took it day by day, minute by minute. My abstinence today is not my abstinence then. What I ate for breakfast that day may not be what I would eat today. It wouldn't be, but it was what I could do that day. And so she became my sponsor. We went vigorously into the steps because that's what the big book says to do. I was sponsored through the big book. And I realized over time how out of, I don't want to use really, I don't want to call myself names. Like I really don't. I don't enjoy that anymore. And let me, on that note, I just want to say this, and I might be all over the place, but I want to say this, that when I was in disease, I hear a lot of people in the rooms talk about people pleasing and that was not me at all. I was as mean as a rattlesnake. And I was the opposite of a people pleaser. Like, if I could somehow unplease you, that was like that gave me a zhuzh, So I don't know. My disease showed up. I was definitely a product of the house I grew up in. They were mean and I was mean. They were hurtful and I was hurtful. I didn't have very good intimate relationships. They say that addiction is a disease of relationships, and every relationship I had was disrupted and disturbed. And very specifically, my relationship with the truth was very disrupted and disturbed. And so I started to really see, but of course it was never me. It was never me. It was because you were being too sensitive or you just didn't understand the greatness of me. You didn't really get, all of my fabulousness. And so if you could think at a higher level or vibrate at a different frequency, then you could get it. The problem wasn't that I was being unkind. And, so I started to really see my part. And when I went into my fourth step, one of the things that I realized in my fourth step, which was one of the single most liberating things I've ever realized in my life, was it's all my part. It is 100% my part. Whether I caused it or whether I'm trying to control it, it's my part. Because that's not to say that sometimes people aren't unkind to me. I mean, some people are. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the world, and sometimes you encounter somebody who's a little out of their minds. But if I ruminate on it, resent over it, perseverate, I have a rule in my life right now. If I tell the story more than twice, I'm doing something. I'm up to something. I'm recruiting people. I'm litigating something, so I tell my sponsor once, I maybe do a 10 step with someone else, and then I stop talking about it because, I'm not just a food addict. I'm an everything addict. If they had resentaholics, I would be there. If they had, it doesn't matter what it is. I go to anything for the hit. And sometimes feeling wronged by other people gives me the hit, so I'm very, very, so today, that's why I'm saying my abstinence has evolved quite a bit. I've been restored to sanity. So I went vigorously through the steps. I started to sponsor people as soon as I could. And I do a lot of service. I do a lot of service even when I don't want to do a lot of service, which is a lot of the time. Less now than before. Now I actually really like the service, but I remember when I heard the step about you'll be restored to sanity, and I thought, well, that couldn't possibly apply to me because I've never been sane. So I don't know what to be restored to. But what I've realized over time is that, I looked up the word restoration, and for any of you who know me, I love to look up the words. It's one of my favorite things is to look up the words. And a restoration means to be put back in an original condition. And so I take that to mean that I am the person that God intended me to be, even if I never actually was that person before. So now I have my intuition. I used to have an intuition, but my disease was the intuition interrupter. I would have a feeling about someone and I didn't trust it, or I didn't go with it, or I I don't know what I did. Food was always somehow in the way. And so now when I have an intuition, I get quiet with it. I listen to it. I trust myself. And I I go from there. Part of recovery has been restoring me to not just my intuition, but also my natural internal tempo. I realized I was living life at a breakneck speed, and I used to kid around with my dad. My father's a very interesting guy. He died very young, but we used to joke around with him and say, Sal can't hurry. Sal can't hurry. My father was like genetically incapable of moving quickly. It was just so, he just couldn't do it. And you want to know what? I can't hurry either. The minute I hurry, I break it, I forget it, I lose it, I crash it. I cannot hurry. So I've learned to slow my life down and allow more time to get things done because it aligns better with the tempo I feel inside. So I'm much more aligned with like a natural pacing of life. Regarding the food, because this is a program about food, I became abstinent August 1st, 2022 with the gift of desperation. I still have it. I remember July 31st, 2022, because that's what keeps me abstinent. I never, ever, ever want to go back there. And so I weigh and measure. I food prep once a week. I eat only what's on my plan. I still don't eat sugar, or any of those red light foods. I have a red light list. I know people have red light, yellow light, green light. If I could live in a yellow light world, I might be in a different meeting right now. It would be, look at me being moderate. Anonymous, I cannot be moderate. So moderate's not a thing that exists in my life. So I have red light, green light. It's totally fine. If you would have told me, July 30th, 2022, that you will have all this structure to your day. I wake up early. My friend on this meeting knows I'm a very early morning texter. I wake the roosters. I wake up early. I go to bed early. I do the same thing every day. I sit and I connect with my higher power, who I choose to call God. But I hear people call their higher power HP. And so for that, what I do every morning, I say out loud before I get out of bed, HP means, hey, pal. I'm in a relationship with God. I'm in a relationship. And like any relationship, God is not my mystical concierge. I have to contribute to the relationship or the relationship doesn't work. If I don't contribute to my marriage, my husband isn't going to like it and my marriage isn't going to work. On a side note, because I love happy endings, my husband is still in recovery and sober, and we just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. So thank God for these rooms and for these 12-step programs. I no longer hit people in the head with shoes. I no longer want to do things like that. I don't have the rage I used to have. I lead a very disciplined, structured life that has set me free. I never thought there would be so much freedom from the structure of my day, but the structure is what I rely on. And lately my program has evolved. I still talk to my sponsor. We're going back through the steps again. I have sponsees. One of the things that I just want to share, because it's something that I've been working on lately, is I watch my words. I watch my language. I watch my descriptions of things. I no longer say I'm exhausted or starving or that was terrible or I'm devastated.
2 minutes, Mitchell.
Thank you. I say things like I'm a little tired today. And I could maybe eat my meal a little sooner. I'm feeling a little hungry. Since I've been in program, my sister-in-law, who was my sister-in-law for 36 years and the closest person to me, was very kind of suddenly diagnosed with cancer, and she did pass away. And I grieve her loss. She passed away in the summer of 2024. I grieve her loss through sadness. And I'm grateful for the years I had with her. Who gets to say that about their sister-in-law but me? I feel so lucky. And I get to say that I'm sad and I miss her, but I don't have to say I'm devastated. I don't know. There might be things that devastate me, but I watch my language these days because I used to live my life at a 0 or an 11, and now I live my life at a 5 or a 6. And I want the words I speak to be at a 5 or a 6. So I'm careful there. And recovery is a process and it evolves. And this is just one part of the evolution. This wasn't something I was thinking about 16 months ago. But what I will say is that I got abstinent August 1st, 2022. And I don't pick up no matter what. Life comes, life goes. This too shall pass. I don't pick up no matter what. There hasn't been a single feeling, event, occurrence, or change that food would have solved. 30 days after my sister-in-law died, I dropped off my oldest child to college for the first time. It was a season. Let's just put it that way. Food wouldn't have fixed it. Food doesn't solve it. I don't pick up no matter what. And I know I have about 30 seconds left. I heard somebody say recently, my permanent address is in the here and now. And so I wanted to just share that with you. I'm so grateful to be with all of you in the here and now. There is no moment that's better than this one. And I thank you for letting me share. Thank you so much. I pass.